Hi, welcome back to part 2 of our question and answer session with our very, very special guest star from What Vivi Did Next and Vivi's Kitchen Garden, Vivi. Hello Vivi, welcome.
Hello Richard, thank you for having me.
Oh, you're very, very
We
welcome.
turned into Richard and Judy.
I'm having you as well.
Sorry. No, you're Richard and Judy. Who am I then? Oh, I'm that doctor. What's his name?
Dr. Phil.
No.
Dr. Chris.
Doctor Who.
Doctor Who. You look like
Sorry,
Chris Tarrant.
just having a little
Chris
giggle
Tarrant.
there.
David Tennant.
Now let's get serious, guys. We've got plenty of questions to get through for this second round of Q&A. So, silence. Honestly, these two, they're incorrigible, aren't they? So Angela has got a question. What are your favourite and least favourite crops to grow and your biggest successes and failures? She's in the Basque country in northern Spain. She's tried repeatedly to grow Florence fennel a la Vivi, but it's impossible. It bolts.
Probably too hot and dry where you are. I would think, I don't know your range of temperatures entirely, but I would have thought too dry, too warm.
Okay.
Least favourite, as in to grow, as in I won't grow it because I don't like to eat it. Sweet corn, bleh, and Monge peas, bleh. Oh, and radishes, bleh. Just don't like them. Honestly, I'm not fussy. There's, most things I absolutely love, but Monge peas and sweet corn, what's for lunch?
Monge
Monge and sweet
yeah,
corn
so
now.
I don't grow them. Why would you grow something you don't like to eat?
Exactly. You've got to choose the things that are
Yeah.
going to turn you on. Okra.
Oh yeah, okra. No, we'd never grow
I'd
okra.
never grow okra.
No,
Have you ever had it?
Well, when it's deep fried, I quite like it deep fried.
Is
In
it
bread
slimy
crumbs.
inside?
No.
No.
Well, I've only had it when it's slimy inside and it's disgusting.
Isn't it called dead lady's fingers?
Dead lady's
Oh.
fingers.
It's very
Oh,
bizarre.
yeah, I'm
Who
not
would
to go
want
do
to eat
okra
a dead
either now.
lady's finger?
What was the other part of that? So what you wouldn't grow?
Is it what you wouldn't? Well, failures. Failures. What are your least favourite and least favourite, and your biggest successes and failures?
I think our successes last year were tomatoes. They were fantastic last year. Across the board, all the varieties we grew were absolutely fantastic. Biggest failures,
Chickpeas this year.
chickpeas this year, I
Your
think.
chickpeas last year, Vivi.
Yeah,
They were a
really
failure,
rubbish
weren't they?
germination.
And they're such an easy thing to grow,
Yeah.
aren't they?
They
As long
don't
as
need any
germinate.
care. All they need is to germinate. Once they germinated, that's it. But I thought beans were hard last year. They hated the
They
drought.
didn't like the heat, no.
But I don't think. Do you know what? I don't think things are massive failures either. I think that it's more like, well, that's an experiment. It didn't work. Never mind. I think it's always worth trying something for at least a couple of years. As long as you're not taking up too much space, try it for a couple of years because it might purely be a weather condition that stops you getting a result that first year. So try again. Second year, you might be more successful.
But I think the most important thing is grow what you eat. If you're going to grow to eat, which is
That's
what
what we
hopefully
do.
everyone is
Yeah.
doing, grow what you like. It's
Right.
interesting because I do think sweet corn is one of those crops which you spend an awful long time nurturing it and you might get one sweet corn cob on a plant, hopefully a few more, but one, and it just seems to me to be a big amount of space to get
Yeah.
a very small crop.
A lot of space, a lot
Unlike
of
your
time.
flint corn,
Which goes on all through winter.
which, because it's used for so many different things, you use it for popping and for flour. Yeah, giving space over to things, it's important you eat them.
Great, thank you. So Elaine, she's wanting to replant green beans for fall.
Right, yeah. Bush
Have you
beans,
ever
I
done a
assume.
second planting in fall? When should she plant? And can she plant anything out in September?
Well, yes. As long as you're sowing it now, you can plant it out in September. Where is she? Did she say where she is?
So Elaine is central New York. Finger Lakes region.
Oh, so it's going to be cold in winter.
Cold in winter, very cold in winter.
Oh, I think September's pushing it.
I think you'll get away
September,
not
October,
sowing.
November.
Sow now some brassicas like Cavolo Nero
Yeah.
and Brussels sprouts and spring cabbage, things like that. Again, as with the question we had in the first part, they're most probably going to need some type of cover, fleecing, over the winter, but they will overwinter for next year.
Yeah. Autumn King. Autumn King
King.
carrots.
Autumn
They'll
King.
happily sit in frosty ground.
But you need to sow them now.
Yeah.
You really need to get those in the ground. In fact, we got our Autumn King, our last sowing of Autumn King in the ground last week.
Excellent.
So,
But as for beans in particular, green beans, because you're talking about doing them for September, you kind of need to think roughly about 90 days to get them to maturity. So, you're suggesting, plant them now in pots and then plant them. I've never sown them that late or planted that late purely because in September I still wouldn't have any space in the garden because this year's beans will still be up and just beginning to start drying, but they won't come down till the middle of October, by which time it's far too late to put anything like that in.
we did have, last year, we had a terrible year with beans, mainly because a lot of our beans developed mosaic virus, and I've noticed that one of our climbing beans has developed mosaic virus this year. So what we did do last year is we sowed some yellow bush beans about the middle of July, and they started coming through really about sort of the middle of September through to early October. So if you're going to get them in the ground now, obviously if you have somewhere where you can bring them in, you can get them into pots and grow them on, and then just bring them into a conservatory, and you'll most probably extend that by another 4 weeks.
Great, lovely. So, Charissa writes, I'm wondering if you had unlimited space, what is the...
Oh, lolly space.
What was the question?
Yeah, just like,
I hadn't finished.
we've obviously both fantasised about more space over and over again.
What
Sorry.
is something you would grow more of?
It's not something I'd grow more of, it's something I would grow that I don't currently grow. If I had my fantasy second plot, without doubt, I would grow my soft fruits and my orchard fruits. I would have an entire garden just for fruit. I love fruit, but it's not my main meal, so I don't have any fruit in my garden. Well, apart from my 2 blueberry bushes now.
Woo!
Oh yeah. I sort of think it's going to be the same answer, because we have some raspberries at the community gardens, and we have some raspberries and some gooseberries in tubs at the allotments, and a few strawberries. But I would love to be able to have again, I think it would, if we could double our size of plot, it would be rhubarb and fruits. That's what it would be. Yeah, and I'd most probably have baskets of or some type of hanging device for strawberries.
A towel of Babylon.
Because I love the way that they do hang over the side, or can hang over the side.
And I would love, well, apart from the fact that I would love a walled garden, I'd love my own walled garden. If I had more space, the idea of experimenting with training apples in different ways, I would love that, because I think one of my joys in the garden, I like being quite neat and precise, so I think training fruit trees would really suit me.
You'd have step overs.
Yeah, exactly.
Our next door plot, they've got step overs.
Oh, I love that. And then fans, and then cordons on the side, and I'd love it. But it's not going to happen, so it's just a fantasy.
I'd also like to build an orchard.
Yeah. Oh, and have a goat to keep the grass trim.
Oh yeah, that would be rather nice. And some sheep.
You see, Charissa, what you've done, you've set them off on a fantasy.
You can tell that these fantasies aren't buried too deep,
they're
can't
not.
you?
They're absolutely
They're just waiting to burst out.
So let's move on.
Okay.
Shall we?
I'm still fantasising about the
So,
goat.
Jane, Southern Ontario, Canada.
Well,
They've been growing tomatoes in containers, but some of their plants have developed blossom end rot.
Bum, bum, bum.
They've used calcium nitrate regularly and shocked them once with a limestone slurry, but
Wow.
they're still finding affected fruit. Is there anything you could suggest to stop this? And could you offer tips for preventing it next year?
well, one tip is to grow different tomatoes, because blossom end rot particularly comes on those tomatoes which have a tip. So plum shaped tomatoes and those that have a tip do get it more than others. So pick your varieties.
Yeah.
But if you have varieties that do have blossom end rot, I think one of the other tips is to make sure there's plenty of air circulation, so that when there is dew or moisture on the skin and it drops down, it
It's got a chance to
evaporates
dry
away.
quickly, yeah. The other thought about blossom end rot is that people often think it's to do with calcium deficiency, so give it a calcium feed. And it's now believed that it's not actually a deficiency of calcium within the plant. The plant has enough calcium, but it can't move it out to the fruits. So that's why I use my Epsom salts. So even though it's magnesium, that addition of magnesium helps the calcium in the plant to move around to where it's needed.
Oh, so it helps the uptake of the...
Exactly. So
Right.
in the same way that, for instance, if you've got low iron and you're prescribed an iron tablet, having vitamin C helps with your iron absorption. So if you're having spinach, a load of spinach to help your iron, have an orange with it, because the vitamin C will help you absorb the iron. So magnesium in Epsom salts to help the calcium be absorbed and shifted around the tomato plant. I've been using it for the last 5 years and I haven't had blossom end rot, apart from last year on 2 plants that I didn't give Epsom salts to.
Well, there we are.
So
Great.
The proof is in
the Epsom pudding.
last year's.
Good answer.
Yeah.
Good answer. Hope that answers your question.
And I suppose with that uptake as well, removing the bottom leaves, which I know a lot of people
Definitely.
don't do,
For air circulation.
for less leaf on it, it means that the minerals will be able to get into
Move
I
it where it's
see.
needed,
Yeah,
yeah.
rather
being
than being
wasted
wasted.
lower down.
Yeah, I understand.
Yeah.
Great. So Greta writes, what veg are you best at being self-reliant with?
Oh, well,
And what is your favourite
I know.
lettuce to grow?
lettuce,
What's your favourite?
lettuce,
Which one?
green one
Lettuce.
or red one, or frisee. I like any lettuce really,
Yeah.
Romaine's
but
rather lovely, isn't it?
but I want to grow her lettuce.
But
Oh,
self-
what, the red Rubens?
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't have a particular favourite, but the red Rubens became a favourite because it did so well last year and it didn't bolt when everything else was starting to bolt. It didn't bolt in the drought, so it's been beautiful this year too. But as for, what are we most self-sufficient in?
self-reliant.
Oh, I would say, for me, definitely it's tomatoes. I haven't bought either fresh tomatoes or tinned tomatoes or bottled tomatoes. I haven't bought any for about 4 years now.
Wow,
It's pretty...
that's a major achievement.
And as a vegetarian, if you think about how many of my
Yeah.
dishes have tomatoes as a base, so it's the one thing, if I had a batch, I'd want it to say, I've done all my own tomatoes.
Yeah, I think that's amazing.
What about you, Paul?
I guess possibly carrots. We seem to have a good amount of carrots. Actually, tomatoes,
And brassicas as well.
tomatoes and brassicas. But
Oh yeah.
but the thing is, again, another thing about what people don't necessarily think is that you can eat any of the brassica leaves. Some are a bit more bitter than others or a bit stronger than others, but at the moment we're growing Brussels sprouts, or some of our Brussels sprouts have already formed and
Wow.
gone, blown, but we will be eating the Brussels sprout leaves.
Oh,
so
divine.
the
The tops.
the tops
Oh,
is
with butter. Just with butter.
Unbelievable.
£9.50 in a restaurant I saw the other day. Brussels sprout tops.
We had them at Christmas,
£9.50.
didn't we?
Bonkers.
We
We
did.
got a Christmas meal and it was just divine.
Yeah, I think But we're always successful. I mean, our carrots, our Autumn King carrots, which we sowed at this time last year, kept us going from really Christmas
and they were
through
lovely.
to, I think,
They looked
April.
great.
Until they turn to wood.
But even then, you can use them.
You can eat
You
around
could carve
them.
them.
You can eat
You
around
could carve them.
around
Just
the wood.
Boil them to smithereens and then blitz them in the blender, and
Yeah.
you'd never
Yeah.
know there'd been any wood in there.
Greta also asks as well. What
Greta, you're cheeky. You're
she's
doing so
got
many
two
questions.
here. She's got two because we've moved into your page now.
Oh.
Oh,
Planet
Greta,
Vegetarian.
you're cheeky.
So, what can't you grow but you'd love to?
Ooh.
What does that?
What can't you grow? What can
Is a
you not
challenge.
grow but
Oh.
you'd love to grow it? It's a difficult one.
Because I was going to say, fruit. I could grow it. I can't grow it because don't have space. So in other words, what?
Well, it could be
I tell you something that would be nice would be aubergines.
Mm.
But I don't. I'm not sure if I'm warm enough outside. But then I always thought that about peppers, and I grow my peppers outdoors. So I think that's my one. I'm going to choose aubergines because I love to eat them. But I don't know how successful they'd be on my pot. Do you know what? I might have a go next year. You've just put a little seed into my head now. Aubergines. What's yours?
I think full-size broccoli.
Like a calabrese.
Calabrese, yeah. Never been able to grow full-size calabrese. Last year we grew cauliflowers and they did quite
Oh, yeah,
well
well
until they
done.
bolted, but they were really good. Yeah, calabrese.
I'm going to just add a second one. Brussels sprouts. So this year is my 4th attempt. My 4th.
Why do you think that happens?
Oh, I
Why?
don't know. I get these little teeny tiny, and I took leaves off and I took tops. So I did what everyone said, and I just, I don't know. Maybe it's because they're in a queue for so long in the cold frame before they go in the ground. Maybe I just stunt them too much. I don't know. I'm having a go again.
Do
So-
you stake them?
I didn't.
I'd stake
I'll
them.
stake them. I'll stake them next year.
Because
Worth
they like that wind drop, but not too much. I
Okay.
find.
Okay,
Good tip. Thank you.
great. So, a comment from Stephanie. She'd like to see canning videos from you, Vivi.
Honestly, if you want to stay up with me till 2 in the morning canning, you'd be more
You
than
do
welcome.
bottling videos.
We don't call it canning in the UK, we call it bottling. But
And you've got some. There are some videos on your channel, aren't there?
I don't think I've ever done it. The thing with bottling, my main thing is tomatoes. It's very easy to get it wrong. Getting it wrong can mean death, and I'm not exaggerating. So I think
Is that
one
botulism?
because of botulism, which is totally invisible, has no smell, you have no way of knowing that organism has got into your produce. So I think one of my reasons for being a bit hesitant about doing it is I don't want to be held responsible for deaths all over the planet.
Yeah.
What I will say, and also the pure fact of the matter is, if I've been working all day, I'm in the garden and I bring my produce home and I'm prepping it, often it's gone midnight when I'm bottling, and I honestly don't think I'd want to point the camera at myself at 2 in the morning. What I would recommend is the Ball canning book. So, I don't know if you guys have heard of this. We have Kilner jars in the UK. In the States they have the Ball canning jars. So the Ball company have got this brilliant book. It's like that thick. It's massively thick, full of tons of recipes. And it's not like recipes where you think, oh, a pinch of this and a pinch of that. Everything is done incredibly accurately. So you have to be accurate with your measurements. You have to be immaculate with your sterilisation of all your equipment. You have to be absolutely accurate with your timings in the water bath canner. So it's definitely something I would say folks should explore, have a go at, but follow a very strict recipe. Because the other thing is I could say what I'm doing on video, and if someone slightly mishears it and uses the wrong amount, so I don't want that responsibility. But, have a go. It's well worth it. That's how I live through the winter.
It is something I'm fearful of.
Yeah.
I mean, genuinely.
Oh, I've got to say, every time I open a bottle of tomatoes, I do think, is this my last supper?
I suppose I wonder why. Why?
Why would you put that jeopardy into your life?
Well, why?
Well, we
Why
freeze
why
ours, don't
can
we?
instead of freezing?
Because the freezer's got filled.
Yes.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
if
But now
if
I
you
bought another
had,
freezer.
you've now got your further land space. Let's
So
say.
if I have more land. Okay, so here's the thing. Obviously with the freezer, it's an ongoing power use.
Yeah.
Yes.
And if I lost my power for more
Yes.
than 2 or 3
Yes, that's
days,
very true.
I've lost my whole store.
Yeah.
So to have some things bottled, some things dried, some things frozen. So with my beans, I'll do half of them dried, half frozen.
Yeah.
The dried beans, they take more fuel because of the cooking time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The freezer beans use less fuel for cooking, but they're using the freezer fuel.
Yeah.
So it's that. So obviously if you're living off grid or you're making your own power, you don't want to use all that power on a freezer. It's better to use it on a 1.5 hour water bath canning session.
Yeah. I get that.
Okay. Great. Thank you.
Now what I was going to add was, I've done a bit of canning or bottling before, but I thought it was something I really had to explore
Yeah.
now, because it's part of that trying to be self-sufficient life.
Where you are in life.
So I really
Yeah.
had to explore it and not ignore it.
For me, then the next one we see a lot of it on Planet Vegetaria is fermenting.
I'm like you on that.
Oh.
I'm the same as you. No.
Oh, it's like if you find something in the back of the fridge that's 3 weeks old, would you eat it? No, of course you blimmin' wouldn't. Oh, would you put your socks in a Kilner jar and add some vinegar and then drink it? No, of course you wouldn't.
Oh, that sounds quite
But
interesting.
for gut health,
Listen,
Gut health
Apparently
is
it's
supposed to be
amazing.
fantastic.
I know.
And I know
I
there
don't mean
are
any
there are a lot
disrespect.
of there are a number of people who do, and I do like Greta's preserved lemons. That looks really, really nice because she uses them in salads and other things as well. And they look really great. So I think, as Richard's not a huge fan of fermented
anything
food,
fermented.
Or pickles.
he doesn't like pickles
I
either.
can't eat
anything
pickles.
like
They give me
that.
heartburn.
I think we're going to try those preserved lemons.
Lovely.
Good
Great.
luck.
So, Brian, one of your top fans,
Oh, hello, Brian in a top fan. It's not quite a top hat, is it?
was it easy to transition to
I haven't
eat-
transitioned yet. Sorry.
I don't think you meant that, Vivi.
Okay, or maybe I have transitioned and this is the result. Absolutely remarkable what they can do with surgery these days, isn't it? Look at me. Sorry.
I wasn't talking about that.
Oh, I beg your pardon.
Was it easy to transition to eating just from the allotment versus the store?
Okay, that's a good. No, it's a good question. So I still do buy food. So rice, nuts,
A little oil, maybe.
oil. Yeah, I use quite a lot of oil. So rice, nuts, oil, lentils. Because seriously, I'm not going to be threshing and winnowing. So like all my staples, I still do buy. In terms, so it's not been difficult to transition in so much as I've always, or at least in the last sort of 8-9 years, I've been growing my own anyway, and that's always been a huge part of my diet. The biggest change, the biggest transition, and it still flummoxes me every now and again, is, you know those days when you come home from work and you're a bit tired and you just can't be bothered to cook, and you think, oh, I'll have a pizza. I'll just pop out and buy a pizza. No more. So the biggest change is just trying to be organised to make sure there's always some sort of meal that's already cooked for the days when I'm too tired, because it's great. I've got all this beautiful produce. I've got squash, bottled tomatoes, I've got strings of onions, but they're all just raw ingredients. They're beautiful raw ingredients, but that's what they are. So there's very little that I grow that you just have as a bit of a snack when you come in from work and you're tired, or it's midnight, you're watching a movie and you think, oh, I've got a little rumble going on, I fancy something. Well, you can't fancy something because you can't go out and buy it. So you look in the fridge and you go, well, I've got 3 onions.
Some rice.
I'm just going to go to bed hungry because I can't be bothered. But it's all right, really. It's grand.
I think it's also interesting the people that do grow significantly, and I know a few, and they let their harvest go over and they still buy from the supermarket. I find that really sort of
Bonkers.
bizarre. I mean, we were accused of that with our carrots, but some of our carrots have gone to seed because A, we wanted the umbels of the flowers, and B, we wanted to see if we could get seeds from them to sow next year. But yeah, I think that's always interesting when harvests aren't harvested.
What breaks my heart is when I see other plots with their soft fruits.
Yeah.
And they don't harvest their soft fruits, and eventually the birds have them. I think, oh, I would have given my left arm to have your soft fruit. If you weren't going to have it, I would have been so grateful. I would have swapped. I would have swapped a squash for some, but yeah, never mind. But no, not a difficult transition. Thank you.
Oh, good.
Candied squash.
No. So to give it a sweetness, to have as a sweetie.
Yeah.
Oh no.
Mm.
Oh.
Something
Pumpkin
to look
pie.
into.
Good.
Yeah.
Let's move on to the next question because we've
Snacks.
still got quite a few to get through. Let's make a move.
Hint, hint.
So Sarah talks about storing beans. Now I think we've kind of covered quite a bit of that in part 1, but she's also asking, how does she know when to pick them? I think we covered a little bit of that. Before storing, yeah.
Is it picking for storing or picking for eating?
Picking, I think, for
It's
storing,
different.
but she says she doesn't have a clue when it comes to beans. So maybe we could quickly cover knowing when they're ready to store or when they're ready to harvest.
Well, I think if they're green beans or runner beans, you need to sort of pick them when they're
Young.
about 5
Little.
inches, something
Yeah.
like that, 6 inches maximum. When
Before
runner
the beans have even before they've hardly swelled even.
yeah, absolutely. Because you are eating. You're not eating that bean for protein. You're eating it for the veg of the pods. So it is a vegetable rather than a protein source. But I think you covered the
Yeah,
other bit.
just
Yes.
go have a look back at the part 1 on my channel, which is a couple of days ago. But essentially, if it's for the beans for harvesting, when they're fat in the pod, when you can see them in the pod, and if you want to eat the whole pod, don't let the beans get fat because that will mean the pod itself is tough.
Tough,
Great.
stringy.
Oh, can't bear that. Makes me gag.
He absolutely hates.
We've got a
Me
bean
too.
strings.
Oh, awful, awful.
Oh.
Paul served them several times to me,
Oh,
and
and then you just don't trust the plate anymore. You don't want to put your fork in and do it.
Oh god,
You just
you
don't
two are
trust the
exactly
next
the
one,
same.
do you? It's like,
They're
ugh.
exactly the same.
no, I'm
Oh,
the
it's
same.
like, do you know what would be worse? The worst thing in the whole world? Fermented runner bean strings. Ooh. Or served in a slug trap.
Guess what we've got for afternoon tea?
Let's move on. Let's move on. Thank you, Sarah, for your question. Have a little dig around Vivi's channel as well because she does lots on beans. You've done loads of videos,
stuff on
haven't
beans,
you?
Yeah.
Over.
Yeah.
Time. Yeah.
Yeah.
Over
I'm sure
about
you'll find
the
what
last
you need
40
to
or 50 years.
need to know. So
Since I retired.
Claudia,
I'm only 90.
Claudia,
Hey, Claudia.
this year for the first time I have gigantes in my garden. They've
Yay!
been flowering continuously for 4 weeks. They've had temperatures above 35 degrees for over 2 weeks. The beans look healthy, have grown well, but shed all their flowers. Completely all of them.
So the beans, well, do you mean the climbing and the
plants
leafy bit,
have
or do you
grown.
mean
Yeah.
so there's no pod developed
Germination.
behind the flower? It's pollination again, surely.
She's, as you suggested, she's been spraying the flowers with water early in the morning, but that's not been successful. She doesn't have a single bean on the plant.
Oh no.
Um,
Okay, so last year when we had our drought and hot summer, I didn't have any beans for ages either. For absolutely ages. I honestly thought I wasn't going to get a harvest at all last year, and then I think it was like right towards the end of August I just saw the first signs of them. So it might be a similar issue.
They may come.
Or it may be pollination again.
Or
I don't
it
know.
may be runner beans rather than gigantes,
Oh yeah, the fake beans.
the fake gigantes.
I don't know.
It's
just keep your fingers
difficult.
crossed.
It's difficult because
Saying it as
I
well.
think actually that's one of the most difficult questions that often get asked about bean pollination, because beans do need to be, well, everything needs to be pollinated, but beans need to be pollinated.
Bee pollinated.
Bee pollinated.
Bee
So
bee.
yeah, bee pollinated.
Yeah.
So they need to.
He's slow, isn't he?
They
Bless him.
the pollen doesn't easily flow from one plant to another, so they're not self-fertile. So something needs to come along to be active in that pollination. And if there aren't a lot of pollinators, then I think we're going to look more into this because it's an increasing.
Yeah, it seems to be coming up a lot.
Yeah,
And we're a
more
bit in
into
the
it
dark too. And a bit. Is there something more going on that?
that we don't know about.
So we just had a slight technical issue then with Tinternet, but we're back online now and we've turned to paper. Good old paper. Vivi came organised, you see, with a backup.
I printed my questions out.
I was relying on the internet. I've learnt my lesson now. Okay, let's get back to the questions.
Yes.
So, Monique. She picked up elephant garlic in March, only to find she didn't get it right. We're not too sure what you mean, Monique, by that. Is it that you didn't grow it well, or it didn't develop, or... Can you give us more information, maybe, and we can try and answer that question online for you?
The only other thing I'd say very quickly about that is, when you say you picked it up in March, do you mean you harvested it in March?
Yeah, I think
Because
a
if
bit
that
early.
was, it would be a bit early. But we're not quite sure what you mean by the question, so I'll tell you what I'll do. I will reply to this online to ask you to just expand, and then we'll try and answer it another time.
Yeah,
Lovely.
Yeah.
Thank you, Vivi.
but elephant garlic isn't a true garlic, though, is it? It's a leek.
Oh, there you go.
Well, we need
Learn
to Google
something
that
new
to
every
check
day.
it, Paul. Are your facts right?
Yeah, it's a leek.
I hope so.
Am I wrong?
Oh no. Okay, so, Kenneth, we really struggle with succession planting. It would be great to hear how you plan out your growing season. Have you both done videos on this? How you plan your growing season?
Sort of.
Yeah.
Do you plan it on paper? I know
Oh,
you
yeah.
scribble, don't you, Vivi?
I do, I scribble.
Yeah.
It's something that I tend to get right, but not through trying.
Oh, I found some more seeds. Quick, chuck them in.
Yeah, it's sort of.
Yeah, we've all done that.
I
haven't
think
we?
this year I wanted to get into making sure that I had lettuce following on from lettuce. So I've done successional sowing for lettuce, and that's been quite successful.
I think your seed box was a good idea.
Yeah.
A seed box in monthly sections, and then so if you get to the end of March and you haven't planted something, you would then put it into the April. And likewise, if you planted some lettuce in May, you could put the packet that still has some seeds in into June to remind
Yes.
you to sow some more in June.
Exactly. I think that does work. I do have an online planner that I use, but I haven't used it this year. And I seem to have, I hope anyway, that I've got the successional sowings right. But it's something that I do intend to plan more next year. You have notebooks and things, don't you?
So I have a notebook and a little calendar, just a cheaper little calendar each year, and I just have sort of sewing reminders on it, and that's all it's for. This calendar is my sewing bits. That helps. This year I haven't done as many different successions, especially with say the salady stuff. because I suddenly got paranoid we were going into drought, and I just wanted to get everything sown so that all my ground was covered. But now what I'll do is I'm going to go back, and things that have bolted, I'll sow where they are. So in a way, that's my succession.
That's your succession.
But the peas, I did 4 sowings in the end, and that's worked really well. There's not a huge amount I would do in succession anyway.
I think
Leaves and
what the question may also mean is you plan that bed. So when you know that when you've taken out your garlic, what is going into that afterwards, which I know you do.
Yeah, that's definitely my January job. Right at the beginning of January, I sit down and I do a picture or a sheet of A4 paper for each bed, and I write what's going in there, and then I think ahead to what's coming out when. So if I know something's coming out in June, what can go in its place? Where are my brassicas going to go? At what point can they go in? So for each bed that's divided into 5 mini beds, each of those beds in my plan will have 2, sometimes 3 crops written down. But it's just as one comes out, the next goes in. As that comes out, the next goes in.
Do you say you know that you're taking your garlic out and you're going to be putting brassicas in because you usually take yours out early June, your garlic?
So the garlic comes out last week of May, beginning of June.
Yeah.
Gets followed by flint corn.
Okay, so your flint corn.
So I have to start that.
That's what I'm saying. So
before the garlic.
you say, well, I need to plant that in June. Therefore, I need to sow that in 6
March
weeks earlier.
or whenever.
Yeah.
So when I do my A4 plan, a picture, then that's when I have my little cheapy calendar next to it, and so that's when I write,
Right.
garlic out, and then I work backwards from that, and I write in sow flint corn, plant flint corn, sow brassicas, etc. It does take a bit of it. Does. Once you've done it for a couple of years, you kind of get used to the rhythm of it. You know that when your onions come out, your brassicas go in. If the brassicas are going to go in July, you know you have to get them sown in April or May.
Yeah.
So it does become easier after a while, but I do spend literally a whole day, one day in January, at the beginning of January, sitting down with my seed packets, with my seed savings, with my pictures, and just whack out the whole plan.
Great. Lovely.
Sorry, I talked a lot then, didn't I? Sorry, guys.
Cucamelons. Tina's talking about cucamelons.
They're another one I don't like.
No.
I don't think we've ever grown cucamelons, have we?
Have you tasted
I
them?
have tasted a cucamelon.
Great in a gin and tonic, but I can't see.
So we don't have any ideas for storage or recipes on that one, I'm afraid, Tina.
Well, for storage, it's cool and dry.
Cool and dry.
And they'll most probably keep for a few weeks. But then the skin will start softening rather than.
Lovely.
But no, isn't that funny? No, asparagus peas. Have you seen them?
I think the thing with just on the cucamelon thing, I think it became this kind of sight about 2 or 3 years ago. Oh, everyone's trying cucamelons. Oh, it's this unusual thing. And I tried one. It was okay to taste, but pretty much all anyone was doing with them was popping them in a G&T. And for me at least, trying to be self-sufficient, I don't have space in my garden to grow garnishes for my cocktails. It's not a meal. Sorry, I've never looked up any recipes. Sorry.
Well, somebody a few years ago did suggest that we grow cucamelons next year, the following year. And I said, all right, okay. This is again about 3 years ago when it was the
fashionable thing.
So I said, they said, do you want to taste one? And I said, oh, yes, please. And I tasted one. It was sort of like, yeah, I'll have a cucumber, thank you. And then the same people the following year grew asparagus peas. And they gave me some seeds for asparagus peas. And I said, could I taste an asparagus pea? It was still in season. And I declined the seeds because...
Okay.
Oh, yeah. So that's a good tip actually, is if you want to, and obviously trying new things, it's great, but if you want to try something new, see if you can taste it on someone else's
Yeah.
plot first. Because if you taste it and you hate it, won't you be glad that you saved yourself the bother of finding the seeds and
I think that's a
planting
top
them?
tip.
That's my
Vivi.
top tip.
That is a top tip.
Try before you buy.
Let's move on. Ideas for storing cucumbers that don't involve pickles. How do you store your cucumbers?
I store them
Fridge?
in my belly.
Well,
I
yeah.
literally
Well, you know.
half of one in the morning in the smoothie and then half one during the day.
So you just use,
Just
you
use-
pick and
yeah.
use.
I'd be really interested to know if people have got ideas though.
Well,
I
Dan,
mean,
Dan
generally
used to
you
use
store-
wet sand. Dan used to pick his and use wet sand, but again, it was just a few weeks.
Yeah.
It was more about extending the season rather than storing for.
I mean, they will
For a
still
while.
stay relatively fresh in the fridge for a week or so, won't they, before they start going soft?
Yeah, yeah.
You know,
But
especially if
You're
they're
not-
not wrapped in plastic.
I
You're not-
think
you're not gonna
fresh
have a
ones.
winter meal though.
No,
No.
fresh ones are.
No. Long term is difficult, isn't
What
it?
you need to remember is the ones that we normally buy have already been well chilled during
Yeah.
storage,
So they
sorry,
spoil
transportation.
That's it.
So they do actually spoil quite quickly.
Yeah. So, leeks. Maud. That was from Susan, by the way. Thank you, Susan. Maud, how do you store your leek harvest? Do you just wash, slice and freeze?
Just give it to the allium leaf mine and then I don't have
Yeah.
to worry
yeah,
about
that's
it.
the problem.
What leek harvest?
Yeah.
It's getting harder and harder each year.
But if
How
we
would
did,
you-
how would
in
we?
the past when you've had leeks.
I would slice and then just open freeze on a tray
Yeah.
and then take them out, just leave them for maybe 30 seconds, take them off the tray, put them into a container,
Right.
back in the freezer. The
Would
other
you
thing
saute them first?
the other thing that I would do, as Richard has just interrupted with, is saute them in olive oil, and then keep them. What I would do, because most people don't have small containers, so I would use I'd use a container, a flat container, like a Tupperware, and do all your leeks, sweat them off, let them cool, put them in a single layer in a Tupperware, put that into the freezer. When it is almost solid, take it out, cut into chunks, and then put back in the freezer, because then you can just take out effectively like a tablespoon of leeks.
Yeah.
And I know a friend
Like a
who
cube of
absolutely
leeks.
adores leeks on toast, and that's something that I
Sounds
suggested
good.
that she do.
Great.
That sounds lovely.
Great. Marvellous.
Ditto.
We're moving on. We're into the home stretch now. Well done, you two. Erica. Hi, Erica.
Hey Erica.
Hi Erica.
She's got a question for both you and Paul. If someone offered you a full-time live-in head gardener job in a huge garden with a productive kitchen garden, would you take the job?
No.
No.
I
Go on, you started.
No.
I'm still go on, because I'm still fantasising.
Don't
about
take
living.
20 minutes, Paul. We haven't got 20 minutes.
If it was about growing for the house, for all the food for the house, no, I wouldn't. That I think is too much stress for me to take on at my age. If it was about maintaining a kitchen garden for a heritage centre or something like that, where we were
Kew
growing
Palace.
heritage vegetables, hint hint,
He needs
Kew
a job.
Palace
He
kitchen
wants a
garden.
job at
I'm
Kew
not
Palace
living at
kitchen
Kew
garden.
Palace, but it's drafty in the winter.
He needs a new queen.
I didn't say I was going to invite him. But if it was something like that, yes, I'd think about it.
Okay.
I think where we are at the moment is about getting that work-life balance.
Mhm.
And I would
Vivi?
say no, straight off. Because on the one hand, it's the fantasy, isn't it? The walled kitchen garden. That's my fantasy. But the fact is, it would be someone else's walled kitchen garden. I ain't working for someone else.
Yeah.
So I'm a bit southeast then. No, I love the idea of it. I love the idea of having something like that for me. But I think
Yeah.
rather similar to Paul, I don't want the pressure. It's enough pressure to grow my own food. I don't want to have to grow it for someone else. What if it goes wrong? It's ultimately, unless that was my property, I'd have to kill the owner, wouldn't I? And I would become the lady of the manor, and then that beautiful walled garden would be mine. And then, yes, I would do it in a jiffy.
So you'd want to start off as being the cook, so that you could do the bottling of the tomatoes to create the botulism, to get rid of the owners.
This is genius.
I think this is a Rosemary and Thyme episode.
Or I am one of the stable girls and I just don't quite put that girth on the saddle right. So when the lady goes out on her hunt, this will teach her for hunting. Oh, sorry, too contentious. But as she goes out and as she jumps over a big fence, that saddle slips, she falls off, cracks her head, and I take over. I get the horse and the garden.
Or you could just do a Downton Abbey and put a bar of soap in the bathroom and she could slip on it.
Oh, that's
Oh, is
true.
that what they did?
happen?
I've never
Yeah,
seen
I
it.
remember Milady, she slips on the soap.
You know you've just gone through an episode of Murder, She Wrote
Yeah.
Well, let's write it
with Lynn
together.
Redgrave. Seriously,
Oh, you're
that's
joking.
That's
Oh,
one of the
hilarious.
Move on.
It should have
Move
been
on.
me.
That's not
It should
Q&A.
have been me.
So that's lovely. Thank
Oh,
you.
and what's his name? Mel.
yeah.
You know, in Lady Chatterley, I'd have to have the groundskeeper.
Oh,
What's
yeah.
his name? Mellows.
Mellows.
Mellows. I need a Mellows too.
Honestly.
I've never given it a moment's thought. Obviously. What's the next question?
Next question. We've got 2 more questions, guys. 2 more.
And then
to go.
you are off the hook.
Yeah. So, Carol, do you have trouble with vandals? No?
No.
No?
No.
No
We're
trouble
very
with
secure.
vandals?
We're very private, secluded, secure site.
And I think the next question from Carol, we've covered what would you love to grow but can't grow in this country. You talked about
Avocados.
We get lemons.
lemons.
Oh, lemons and avocados.
A really big lemon grove. As in lemons that you don't have to wheel back
Yes.
into a conservatory.
Yes.
Like just having a lemon orchard. Oh, I love my lemons.
Have you read that book, Driving
Over Lemons? No, my sister gave it to me ages ago and I still haven't read it and I've got to give it back to her. It's like Andalusia, isn't it?
Yeah, it's a
Yeah,
yeah. I'd read it.
I'm going to have a read.
And the final question is from Viola.
My Viola.
How do you store garlic after harvest? I think this is one for Vivi.
Braid it, hang it, use it. No, I braid mine. Sometimes I still need to get this year's harvest braided. I haven't had time. But I hang it in braids in the shed. I just leave it in the shed because as we go into winter, you know, it gets cooler and cooler. It's perfect. It never gets below freezing in there. Great. The last thing it wants is warmth and moisture. So the last place to store it is you've made your beautiful braid. You went, oh, hang it on the kitchen wall because it looks gorgeous there. Nuh-uh. Because the moisture, the humidity in the kitchen, the warmth, make it just all sprout.
We
So-
keep ours in a cotton bag
Cotton bag.
under the stairs.
Yeah. Perfect.
Great. And I think we've covered all of your questions. If we haven't specifically said your name and the question, it's probably because
It's because Richard's careless and should have gone to school.
it's probably because we've answered your question in another way.
What, psychically?
No, somebody else.
in dance
Asked
form.
the question.
Yeah. In Macathon.
What does that mean?
It's so easy, isn't it?
Means
It
we
really
answered
is easy.
the question in another way, i.e. somebody else has.
I hope that satisfies you.
But don't do it on a Tuesday.
No.
And remember to harvest before the full moon.
I hope you've
Oh, it's been a
enjoyed
long
this.
day.
It's like being in an episode of Looney Tunes. Love it.
I do hope you've enjoyed these 2 wonderful Q&A episodes hosted by Vivi, Richard and Paul. We do apologise for any technical difficulties that occurred during the filming of this programme, but no vegetables were harmed. Thank you. Thank you. We're going to say goodbye now.
Goodbye now.
Goodbye now.
Bye.
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 See you all very soon.
Bye.
Thank you
Bye.
so much.
Thank you.
Bye.
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 Thank you.
Bye. So we've got a question from Tracy. Now this is about tomatoes. One of your specialities, both of you. My tomatoes are simply not developing.
Sorry, got the giggles stopped.
So this question is from Tracy. Now Tracy says her tomatoes are simply not developing. Is there anything else I can do to encourage the fruit? I'm applying tomato feed. Tomatoes aren't developing. What would cause that?
I guess that means that the flowers are coming, but they're not developing from the flowers. So I think it's going to, again, we come back to pollination.
Mm-hmm.
It must be that.